Welcome to the Power in Motion podcast, the show for women who want to develop a kinder relationship with their body so you can feel healthy, happy, and confident without restricting food, doing torturous exercise, or constantly worrying about the number on the scale. I'm your host, Kim Hagle, size-inclusive fitness specialist and certified non-diet health and life coach specializing in body image. This podcast is here to provide weight-neutral, health at every size aligned information and coaching on sustainable habits and mindset shifts so you can feel your very best in the body you have right now. Let's lace up our runners and go for a walk while we chat. Well, hello there, my friends, and welcome to episode 52 of the Joyful Movement Show. I am super excited about this one because since it's episode 52 of this weekly show, that means we are celebrating the first birthday of the podcast today. And if you're listening to this in real time, it's your lucky day because what would a birthday be without gifts? So a little surprise for you. I would love for you to go on over to my Instagram or my Facebook page to see the post from today. So this is Monday, October the 25th. Check out the post from today that has a special gift that you can go access and get yourself a little special treat on me and enjoy with my thanks for being such a loyal listener and supporter of the show. Now, there are limited quantities available for this special treat. So it is first come, first serve, and I will post on my stories when it's all used up. But I hope that you enjoy, and please do post a selfie of you enjoying your gift and tag me in your own stories so that I can see where these special treats ended up. I really want to express my gratitude to each and every one of you for your loyalty to the show and for coming along with me on this non-diet journey. I have learned so much in this last year, not just about diet culture and body acceptance and relationship to movement, but also about myself. And I feel really fortunate to have had some very impactful conversations with some of you along the way who listen to the show. I absolutely love receiving your messages, and I don't take lightly when you reach out and share how you've been affected by dieting or the fitness industry, or when you share how that shaped your opinion of yourself and your relationship to exercise and food and body image. I mean, it makes me very sad to hear how far-reaching this toxic messaging goes, but I feel honored that I'm able to help women see a different possibility for themselves and that you're being inspired and looking at things differently because of what you're learning here. Now, at the time of recording, we've got almost 7,000 downloads on this show, which I would never have foreseen a year ago. For a shy girl who used to nearly vomit at the thought of doing speeches at school, it took a fair bit of thought work for me to believe that, one, I could actually get on a public platform and speak each week, and two, that I'd actually have something interesting enough to share that people would listen and come back. So I don't take it lightly that you're here. And also, if there is a part of you that isn't doing the thing that you know you'd love to do or that you feel called to do because you think that you're not good enough, you can. You can. If I can be here doing this, anything is possible. And if you need someone to believe in you, I do. I really, really do. And that spark is inside of you for a reason. So go and shine, baby. Now, you know, what I think is the coolest part of all of this is the sense of community I feel in doing this work, both with you listeners and all the other amazing professionals I've connected with along the way, many of whom you've met right here on the show. It's kind of interesting, ironic to me, because I always felt so alone in my weight loss and dieting years. Even though everybody was doing it, it still felt really lonely. But I think that's because like true connection, true community can't happen if we're not secure in ourselves or if we're trying to be someone else. How can we really feel connected and supported if we feel like we don't belong? My mentor said to me quite a while ago that when we do our own work and change our own body image and relationship with food, and then we share about that, we give others permission to do the same. that's how we make change in the world. Diet culture, patriarchy, racism, all of these systems that are designed to keep women playing small. I mean, they are big systems and their influence and messaging is everywhere. It's so sneaky and so pervasive. And we can't expect to change all that overnight. But I do believe that the more we talk about this stuff and the more we give others permission to question the status quo, that little by little we're changing things for generations to come. So I hope that inspires you to stay the course because that's what keeps me going. So, on this week's episode, speaking of community and connection, I really wanted to give you the opportunity to pick my brain, whether that was to get some coaching on one of your own struggles or to ask me about my own life, my own journey, and this undieted way of living, or just to get to know me better. I gave you free reign to ask me anything, and you all did not disappoint. You asked me some really great questions, and I'm looking forward to answering them on the show today. Vulnerability is always a little scary because, as my friend Brene Brown would say, it threatens our sense of security and our sense of belonging. But it's also the beautiful space where true connection happens. So I am happy to answer your questions today and hope that in doing so, you can identify with some of what I've gone through and know that we're just really all the same. Also, full disclosure, this is the first episode I'm recording without a script. I usually do write my podcast episodes out word for word because I'm not awesome at talking off of the top of my head. But I felt like I wanted to keep the authenticity of this episode in answering your questions from the heart. So this is going to be raw and unedited and just a really different kind of episode. So I hope that you're looking forward to it as much as I am. So let's dig into some of these questions. I'm going to start with Jennifer's question. She had two. And her first question was asking, how long did it take me to make peace with my body and exercise limitations? So she talks about having some parts of her body that she's struggling to learn to accept. And then wondering how to approach exercise to strengthen those areas and learn to love them. So it's a bit of a two-parter. How long did it take me to accept my body or to make peace with my body and my limitations? I'd say I'm still working on that. I think it's a lifelong journey. You know, when we live in a culture that's very weight centric and where diet culture messaging is everywhere, and we're taught that we have to have a perfect body in order to love it. Um, I think that's going to be a work in progress forever. Um, I also think it's not really practical or the point of all of this to learn to love our body necessarily. And I believe that we can respect our body and accept our body, even if we don't really love it. And that takes the pressure off for me, right? Like Jennifer mentioned, having parts of her body that she's struggling to accept. And I have those parts too. I have parts that I don't necessarily love, but I can appreciate them now. Like, I don't fixate on how they look. That to me has been the biggest transformation is in shifting my thinking from how I look to how I feel. And knowing that my body isn't an object to be admired. It is the vehicle through which I get to experience life, right? Like my body exists for the purpose of allowing me to do the things that I want to do in life. So that helps a lot. Like when I'm looking at a body part that I don't really like the look of, I can shift my thinking into what does that body part allow me to do? What has it done for me? And that just we call that body neutrality. It's different from body positivity in that sense, where body positivity is all about like thinking that we're beautiful and perfect and flawless just as we are. And that for most people, women especially, is a huge jump in thinking, and we're just not ready for that. So neutrality is for me the bridge to accepting those parts of my body that I don't necessarily like the look of. And then the second part of that question is like, how should I approach exercise to strengthen these parts of my body that I don't love and so that I can hopefully learn to love them? And I think that just touches on this nuance that if I'm stronger or if I'm more toned, and I put that in air quotes because I don't even really know what that word means, toned. Um,
Or if this part of my body looks better or performs better, then maybe I'll learn to love it. And I don't think those two are related. Like when we approach exercise or movement from the objective of fixing a part of us so that we can accept it, like if this part of me is different, then I'll accept it. We're never ever going to find that, right? Like that's like saying when I lose the weight, I'll finally like my body, or when I get the job, I'll finally feel successful. Or, we're always putting our happiness and our acceptance into a future thinking. And usually that end goal changes and changes. It's unreachable. So rather, how can I strengthen my body so that I feel my best, so that I function my best? That's the question I like to ask myself when it comes to how I approach exercise these days. I really don't care anymore how an exercise might make my body look. It's more, how do I want my body to feel? And I'm also thinking long term, like I am 44. So I think way down the line, like how do I want my older years to look and be? And that's really more how I approach training now as opposed to the aesthetics of it. Okay, so next up, I had quite a number of people ask about my aha moment when I realized I was done with dieting. Sabrina, who is a colleague in the non diet industry and was recently on the podcast talking about emotional eating, asked, was there a single moment that led to your search of anti diet, or was it a build up process? And then Natalie, who's a listener, said, I know you said that you stopped worrying about your weight and your looks after your son Gage was born, and just wondering if you could elaborate on that. So I'm going to answer these ones together. The truth is, I didn't actually know I was looking for the anti diet approach until it sort of landed in my lap. So, yes, it was definitely a buildup in discovering the non diet movement, but my decision to quit dieting, that was definitely something that happened in a moment. And the moment wasn't exactly when my son Gage was born, but it was in that time period that I was adjusting to having him. And I guess I'll caveat all this by saying I really didn't stop worrying about my looks or my weight. That's something I'm going to talk about specifically in a minute. I guess it's just more accurate to say I decided I could no longer let my quest for thinness and health masquerading as thinness be my sole focus in life, which it really had been up until that point. Um, if you followed the show, then you'll know I've shared on here a number of times how my relationship to food and exercise in the past was really 100% focused on weight. It was very weight centric. I tried all the diets, all the workouts, and I've shared how exhausted, isolated, and obsessed I felt. But I didn't see a way out of it at the time. Like, I really, really believed that thin equaled health. And I had my value and my worth, especially in my career as a personal trainer, really tied up in maintaining my appearance. So Gage came along and he's our fourth child and he has Down syndrome. Um, I also live in a blended family. So I have three older children that came from my first marriage. And then Gage happened and it was a lot. It was a lot all at once. I had so many things on my plate, with the four kids and a fairly new marriage and now this new baby with special needs. And I really thought that I was going to snap back. And I worked out. I was still teaching fitness classes the whole time that I was pregnant. And I was like, I'm just going to do this thing. It'll be fine. And, as soon as he was born, even though I had a lot on my mind, it was like I immediately started watching what I was eating again, and I began exercising pretty soon after he was born, like walking right away. Um, but then I think he was about 3 months old when I decided it would be a good idea to start running. And of course, in true Kim fashion, I did not ease into it. Pretty sure I went out and ran a 5K the first time that I went for a run. That's a bad idea. Like, if you are a new mom listening to this podcast, please don't do that. Like, your body needs a lot more time to heal. And there's a lot of strength training that should be done before you start running. You got to rebuild your core and ensure that your pelvic floor is healing and all that good. So do as I say, not as I do. But I did that and ended up sustaining a pretty significant back injury, which grounded me, of course. So then I couldn't exercise off the things that I was eating. And I started to gain a bit of weight. And then that's the moment where I was faced with with the decision of, okay, so I can't outrun my dietary transgressions, so to speak. I can't use exercise as my usual tool for burning off food. So I thought, well, then I have to tighten up the diet even more. And I started to plan out a cleanse, followed by, a few weeks of a very strict meal plan. And I remember this moment of sitting there, like mapping it all out, planning my grocery list. And then the baby started to cry. And I was like, OMG, like, what am I doing? Like, I can't do this. And yeah, that was the moment. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I do not have the mental space and the energy to take this on. And when I sat with the there was such a relief that came over me when I sat with that. Like, to tell you the truth, I was like, I don't even care. Like, I actually didn't care at that moment. I was like, I have way bigger fish to fry right now than trying to be thin. I was really, really just over it. And that was the moment where I just was like, I don't need this in my life anymore. Like, I am over 40 and it's about time I learned to accept myself as I am. And I knew in that moment that my true friends and my family love me for more than my weight. And I kind of felt like those who didn't, well, oh, well, like they're just gonna have to deal. And I got really honest with myself in that moment about what mattered to me and how I wanted to show up in the world and for myself and for my kids and for my family. And I was really just sick of trying to be someone else. So that was my turning point. And I didn't know what to do with it. I just knew I wasn't going to diet again. So I hadn't even heard of intuitive eating. The non-diet approach was not something that I had ever heard talk of. I didn't know any of the things that I'm currently teaching in this industry. But I just started like Googling stuff and researching anything I could find, but learning how to love and accept my body without dieting or trying to lose weight. And that's where the buildup started. So yeah, the moment of deciding was a moment, but then the buildup of finding the anti-diet approach happened gradually as I was just Googling things and searching for different accounts on social media. And somewhere in there, I found Stephanie Doje, who ended up becoming my mentor and the coach who I studied under and learned the non-diet approach. I attended her professional mentorship for health professionals. And that's when I transitioned my business back or over to the non diet approach. So, very gradual unlearning and relearning. But that decision to end dieting happened very quickly. So then Sabrina asked a follow up question, and another listener, Lisa, asked this too is, do you still have days where you don't like your body, or do you ever miss dieting? And here's the thing that, I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate to this too. Like, yeah, I do. There are lots of days where I think maybe I should lose some weight or, I see that someone else has, and I think I get momentarily jealous of their perceived success. Um, but here's what's different, I guess, now is one, I've learned a lot about thought work. Um, I know that we have 60,000 thoughts a day, and not all of them are true. And just because a thought goes through my mind doesn't mean anything about me. Like, our thoughts don't have moral value, they're just simply sentences that pass through. And I can question each thought and question its validity and challenge it and go, is that true? Would that serve me? So yeah, there's moments where I feel jealous about other people's perceived success with losing weight. But I know that 95% of weight loss attempts don't end up lasting. for more than 2 to 5 years. So like I can bring facts in to help me with my thought process. I know that my own dieting attempts didn't last long term. And I remember how much work it was to try to achieve weight loss and then even more work to maintain it. But it also really helps me to remember how I felt when I was thinner and when I was dieting. I let my brain go there. Like, okay, I'm having this thought that it would be better if I lost weight. I'm having this thought that I don't like my body as it is today. Maybe I should lose weight. And then I remember what that entails. That entails restricting everything I eat, eliminating food groups, watching my portions, counting this, counting that, exercising off the things that I ate. It means isolating myself socially or, feeling uncomfortable going to restaurants and not being able to eat the food on the menu and having people judge what's on my plate. And, I remember all of the obsession that went along with that behavior. And I use those memories to consciously decide, how do I want to feel? How do I want to live my life? And I also remind myself or I ask myself, did you actually feel better when you were thinner? And the answer is always no. Like 100%, I felt more validated and I got more compliments and there was maybe some feeling of acceptance, but it wasn't authentic. Those people were just judging me based on my appearance, not on the real me. And I didn't accept myself when I was thinner, right? I still found things to not like about myself and my body, even at my lowest weight. So, yeah, there's definitely times where I still don't love my body and where I kind of wish my body looked different or where I think that maybe it would be a good idea to go back on a diet, but I can recognize that those are just thoughts. And what I've also learned is when I have thoughts about my body, it's never about my body. I've learned that my body image struggles are a really great distraction from the bigger issues in life. So when I hear thoughts in my head about needing to change my body or I don't look good enough or I should lose weight, that to me is an invitation to do the hard work of looking deeper at what am I really trying to avoid right now? What's really going on? What are these thoughts protecting me from? Is a question I've learned to ask. My mentor gave me that one. Body image thoughts are always a surface level thought indicative of something else. Okay, so then the next question came from Robin. And she said, I'd love to know what you wished you'd known before embarking on the non-diet entrepreneurship journey. So this is more to do with my business life. Um, what would I wish I had known? I think what I didn't realize is that entrepreneurship is the deepest dive into self-discovery that I have ever been on. So being a solopreneur in an industry that's kind of new and countercultural and really being the face of your business. Like I am literally the product that I'm selling to the world. That's that was very confronting for me. And I mean, I've mentioned before, like I've always been a really shy girl. I've always been taught to be the good girl, be quiet, don't ruffle any feathers. And you can't do that in this industry, right? I've had to learn to find my voice and really speak out on these things that I'm so passionate about. So like thought work has been the number one thing, like the number one tool that has saved me and kept me going in this business where I probably would have quit very early on if I didn't have that tool. So being able to look at my thoughts objectively and challenge my limiting beliefs and the core beliefs that I had about myself, and manage my mindset so that I can keep me and my business separate. So yeah, I really had to learn to understand that the success of my business, especially, at the very beginning when it was brand new and just starting up at the very beginning of a pandemic, which was awesome timing, by the way. Um, that those challenges didn't mean that I was doing anything wrong or that there was something wrong with me or that I wasn't cut out for this. Like those are all thoughts that I had early on. And I had to learn pretty quickly to manage those thoughts and see the challenges and growing pains of entrepreneurship as just that, just circumstances and just part of the journey and not a reflection on me. I had to also really challenge some core beliefs I had around productivity and the need to prove my worth by how much I was doing or by how, quote, successful I was. And to tell you the truth, this is something that I continue to work on, just as it's a continuous decision day to day to stay on the diet path and to do the work of body acceptance. It's still daily work to remind myself of how I define success and how I value my time and what I'm going to spend my energy on. And I have a real tendency to um, overextend myself and take on more than I can handle to the point where I get overwhelmed because I have a core belief that I have to prove myself by how much that I'm doing. My value is tied to how much that I do. So that is a belief that I continue to work on and letting go of that busy badge and manage that voice in my head that tells me that I have to do more and do it all and do it perfectly and do it all by myself. And that's another part of this entrepreneurship journey that I've had to really work on is the ability to ask for help. Um, there is no way that I could be where I'm at or to continue to do this kind of work without asking for help. And even though I've let go of a lot of like things that I was doing that were unnecessary, and I've managed my thoughts about needing to validate myself through how much I work and set boundaries around how much I give to my business so that I don't get overwhelmed. That's been part of it. But at the same time, like there just is a lot when you're running a business all by yourself. And I'm very fortunate to say that my business has grown and there's a lot going on, like with clients and programs and all of that. Like there is quite a few things that need to get done in the day to day of running a business. So asking for help has been absolutely necessary. Like there is no way that I could continue to do what I do without having help, both at home and in my business. So at home, I'm very fortunate that my husband is also an entrepreneur and doesn't need to be in his business day in and day out. So he's been able to take on a lot of the household responsibilities. And that's been a huge gift and also an exercise for me in letting go because I've had to like loosen up the control and accept that maybe he doesn't do things exactly as I do them, but it's amazing that he's there and that he's willing to take on, the bulk of the household chores and getting the kids where they need to be, helping with lunches, making dinners, cleaning up, and of course my children are a big help too. And like we just know that this is a whole family venture and we're all in this together. So I have that support at home and that's been huge. But I've had to work on my own mindset about being able to ask for that help. And I've had to ask for help within my business as well. So I'm at the stage now where I realized I can't do it all myself. So I have had to bring on an assistant and she is amazing. She helps manage my social media so the forward facing part of my business that you're all seeing now, um, I have help with that. And I'm not ashamed to say it. It was really hard at first especially for that part of my business. That is the part that everybody sees. I really struggled with letting that part of my business go at first. But I've been very fortunate to find a person who is as passionate about this mission as I am and who really gets me and gets my voice. And we're just such a great team. Like we're really in this together. So I want to give a big shout out to Sophia Solomon, who is my social media manager and whose help has brought just so much ease to my business. And I'm really grateful. So yeah, so asking for help has been a huge, huge part of my growth, both personally and professionally. And I know now that I will continue to grow. Like that's, I think, the biggest lesson in entrepreneurship is that it is. an ongoing journey of self-discovery. So, but I wouldn't change it. Like I know that this is where I'm meant to be, and I don't ever see myself doing something different. And my family and friends like to joke that, when will Kim ever figure out what she wants to be when she grows up? And I think it's safe to say that I have finally figured that out. Vanessa asked the next question, and you will all be familiar with Vanessa because she is a fellow non-diet colleague, and she came on to do an interview on the podcast a few episodes back talking about the not good enough voice. So Vanessa is a therapist in Australia, and she asked some deep personal questions. So the first one she asked is, what do you wish people understood about the experience of being a parent of a child with special needs? And oh goodness, there is so much that I could say about this. I could have a whole other podcast about parenting, about being a special needs parent, but um let me keep this brief. So, what do I wish people knew about that experience? So, I guess the one thing I can share is that we knew about Gage's Down syndrome diagnosis before he was born. We did have prenatal testing. Um, and I remember the day that the doctor called to tell us we had to come into the office to discuss the results of our prenatal testing. And at that point, it was just the usual testing that they do that tells you that there's an increased risk. So my family doctor, who I have had since I was 12 years old and have a lot of respect for, said, there is some indicators in your blood work that your child has an increased risk of being born with Down syndrome. And of course, we were shocked. And he said, we need to get you into see a specialist, a genetics counselor, and get you scheduled for an amniocentesis and get a firm diagnosis. And we have to get you in there right away. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, can we just have a little time to digest this information and talk about like what we want to do next? And he's like, we really don't have the luxury of time here, because if you want to do something about this, you only have a week. Because I was, I think, 22 weeks pregnant when we got the results of the test. And I was like, what, like, do something about this? And that's when I realized that most people, and I don't say this with any judgment, it just never crossed my mind, that when most people get prenatal testing done, it's with the intention that if there's something, quote, wrong with the pregnancy, that then they can terminate the pregnancy. And like, that was never something that crossed our minds. And it wasn't after we got the news either. And I guess that is the one thing that I'd want people to know. I'm getting teary about being a special needs parent, is that it's not a death sentence, right? Like, I really think that no matter the child that you're given, that you're blessed with, you will have challenges, and you'll have joys, and you'll run the full gamut of emotion with any child. And not to minimize the experience of some parents whose special needs journey has been a lot more difficult than ours have, but I can say it's nothing to be fearful of. Yeah, there's going to be things that you have to learn. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be bumpy times, ups and downs. But I mean, that's just how it goes with parenting for any child. And all of my children have brought so much joy to my life. And I have learned so much about myself and about the world and about humanity through each of them. And Gage is no exception. Um, he struggles. He does. He's 4 and he just started school, and he's not fully toilet trained. He's working on it. But still goes to school on pull-ups. He um, doesn't speak in full sentences yet. And that, I think, is our biggest frustration, is the communication, because at 4, he definitely knows what he wants and has opinions about things, but isn't able to articulate that sometimes. And it's frustrating for all of us when he can't say what he wants. Um, but he's so smart. Like, we taught him sign language from a very early age. And so he is able to use sign language for the things that he's not able to speak. And honestly, the only limitation to his signing ability is us not being able to keep up with the vocabulary and teach him new words. But gosh, like he knows his alphabet. He can sign and say all the letters. He can recognize them on paper. Like he can count. He knows his colors. Like the intelligence is there. And I think that's one of the big things I want to say about Down syndrome specifically is there's a belief that these people are not intelligent and that they won't amount to much. And there's so much potential. Like he has shown us like just how brilliant he is and how much ability he has. And it's up to us to be creative in teaching him in a way that he can learn and give him the time and space and patience that he needs to grow and thrive. And we've been so fortunate to have great helpers along the way, speech therapists, physiotherapists, OT, and his daycare team was amazing. And now that he's at school, he's got a great team of supporters there as well. It takes a village, and we're very thankful for that. And yeah, he's settling in so well to school. He's got some great little friends. He's been so well received, and people just seem to gravitate towards him and understand that he needs a little extra help, and people are so willing to provide that. So I think that's what I want to say about being a special needs parent is that it you can do it. It can be hard work, but it's so rewarding. And every person has value and has something unique to share with this world. Okay, how about we move on? Um, Vanessa also asked, what are the top three things that helped you change your relationship to exercise? And I think that's a really good question. And here's what I've noticed in these last couple of years working with women on their relationship with exercise and in unlearning and relearning that all myself is that it's one thing to decide you're done with diet culture and you're done with restricting food and you're done with punitive exercise. It's a whole other thing to put it into practice. And once you make that decision, you're really confronted with all of the ways that fitspo messaging and toxic diet culture shows up in your relationship to movement. And that became really clear to me early on when I found myself, even though I had decided I was no longer going to punish my body, I was no longer going to focus on calories burnt through movement, I would find myself out for a run and pushing myself harder to try to meet a certain speed target or to get a certain distance or and focusing on how many calories that I burned. And I found that really hard to let go of initially. And I also found myself not feeling very good in my body. And I recognized this incongruence, this dissonance between how I wanted to feel and what I was committed to as far as treating my body with respect and using movement as a form of self care. Um, and then what was actually happening with my exercise behavior. So, one thing that really helped me change my relationship to exercise, well, I guess the first thing is I stopped calling it exercise. I refer to it as movement. And that's why we're here on the Joyful Movement Show, because exercise to me still carries a connotation that it has to be done a certain way with the objective of changing my body and burning calories. So that's one thing that helped change my relationship to movement, is calling it movement. And two, I had to do a full stop on any of those activities that I previously related or tied to burning calories. I just found I could not go out the door for a run and not think about calories. I could not lift weights in the gym without thinking about how it might sculpt my body. And so I did a full stop and said to myself, as long as I have those types of thoughts in my head, then I will not do those type of activities. And I will only engage in movement that I can approach from a standpoint of self-care. And that really helps me to feel the way I want to feel. And that's where I kind of came up with those three questions that you've heard me say on here before and that I coach my clients on every movement session. I'm asking myself, and I encourage you to ask yourself, how do I feel today? How do I want to feel today? And what do I need to get that feeling? And for the first while, as I was changing my relationship to movement, that looked a lot like walking and yoga. And I definitely had thoughts about that not being enough, but I knew that that's where I needed to be, to get to this place of treating my body with care and respect. And in time, I was able to rebuild trust with my body, and I would choose things that felt good for me, and my brain and my body could trust each other, that we would do the right thing and honor our own needs. And in time, yeah, I started to crave more intense movement. I started to crave running again for entirely different reasons. Now I still love running, but I don't even think about how fast I'm going or how many calories I'm burning. I'm purely out there enjoying the sights and sounds around me and listening to podcasts. It's a totally different experience, but that took time. So, that I guess would be the third thing that I would say really helped is just patience. Vanessa, who asked this question, and I have had conversations before about how memories and even traumas are stored in our body. And I think that has something to do with our relationship to movement. I mean, I'm not quoting science here at all. I'm speaking off the top of my head, but I do think often that can show up when we're moving our body, and it can feel um, uncomfortable. And I think we have to pay attention to those signals that it's okay to take a step back and just do what feels good. And that's what helps to rebuild that trust with yourself and that trust in your body. Okay, so we're running a little long here. I'm gonna answer one last question and then we'll wrap this up. And this is from a listener. Victoria asked, or stated that the issue that she has whenever she starts to focus on intuitive eating or joyful movement, she finds herself researching how to do it and consciously and mindfully considering her decisions throughout the day. But she feels like she's putting a lot of mental energy back into food and exercise and worries that it consumes her thoughts. So she said she tried meal prepping, and so that maybe that would reduce daily decisions and thinking about food. But then she's wondering, is that really intuitive eating? And she said, is this just all part of the process? Is this just the hump that I have to get over as I get more comfortable and experience practicing joyful movement and intuitive eating? And maybe eventually will it become easier and occupy less of my time and focus? So to that, I would say that yes, in time, it definitely starts to feel more natural. But I would also say that this is where I'm so thankful that I learned intuitive eating and joyful movement alongside the self coaching model, which means doing the mindset or thought work about weight, food, health, body image, all at the same time. And I'd highly recommend to anyone who's on this path that if that's possible for you, that you do the same. There's absolutely lots of books, blogs, podcasts, Facebook groups, and other free resources out there to support you. But I found for me and all the women that I worked with that what really made the difference was working with someone directly, because there's just so much wrapped up in our relationship to food and movement. It didn't take me long to figure out that what I thought was a quote problem with food and exercise really went far beyond that. And though the books and free resources that I found out there are excellent, if we don't do that internal work, we can find ourselves turning intuitive eating and movement into just another set of rules. I've heard themes along the way. There tends to be this hope that if I can just figure this out, like if I can get this, then maybe I'll feel better about myself, or maybe I'll lose the weight, or at least be able to accept my body. In other words, there's a hope that if I do something different, I'll get a different result. But the truth is that all of the results we get in life, whether we like them or not, come from our thoughts. Our thoughts create our feelings, and then our feelings influence the action or behavior that we take and the results that we get. So I always say that true transformation begins in the mind. And it's not that you're doing anything wrong or that you just haven't yet found the thing you need to try to get the result you're looking for. It begins by becoming aware of your thoughts and doing that deep mindset work required to transform your relationship to food, movement, and body image. And for me, that's not something I could ever do on my own. Coaching has been a game changer for me. And I think for as long as I live, I will always have a coach. So I would say if there's any way that you can work with someone on this, that would really be helpful, whether that's me or someone else. Or if that's not possible, then surround yourself with as much support as possible, such as what's available inside my free Facebook community, the Joyful Movement Show community, so that you have somewhere where you can continue learning and asking questions about those tricky things that come up along the way. Okay, so I did have other questions that came in, but I know this episode's getting long, so I think we'll wrap it there. And I'll definitely do another one of these some other time. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I hope that you found it valuable and that, in getting to know each other a little bit better, that you feel a little more like we're all the same and we're in this together. So, once again, thank you so much for being here today and being here with me for the last year. It's truly been my joy and honor to walk this journey of joyful movement with each and every one of you. Now, looking forward into November, I've got a whole series of 4 podcast episodes coming up all about intuitive eating. So around here, we tend to focus mostly on our relationship to movement, but you can't really separate the two. They go so closely hand in hand. So I thought it would be cool to dig into intuitive eating for a little bit. And we'll start off by talking about how to know if your healthy lifestyle is actually a diet in disguise and how sneaky and pervasive diet culture really is, the tricky little ways that it infiltrates our life, and how restriction really in any way affects us physically, emotionally, and mentally. And then we'll get into talking about what intuitive eating actually is and what it isn't, and some of the fears that often accompany adopting these 10 principles into your life. And so I'll dispel a lot of those myths that tend to go along with intuitive eating, so that you can really have a clear picture of how it might help you find that food freedom and that peace with food that you're really looking for, so you can just eat and free up all that space in your brain for other more important things. And I'll also have a special guest on towards the end of the month, a client of mine who has been able to heal her own relationship with food after years and years and years of dieting and struggle, and how the concepts of intuitive eating and health at every size have helped her. So there's lots to look forward to coming up in November. All right. So thank you so much once again for hanging out with me today. If you want to keep in touch, you can find me on my social media channels. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Radiant Vitality Wellness. And then, of course, you can explore how to work with me on my website, which is www.radiantvitality.ca. So I will see you back here next Monday with more non-diet motivation. In the meantime, be well, and here's to your radiant vitality. Thanks for tuning into the Power in Motion podcast today. If you love what you're learning here, then I invite you to take the next step of embodying these concepts into your own life so that you can live your healthiest, happiest life and never again feel held back by your body. Coaching is the fastest, most efficient pathway to taking what you know in your head to actually applying it and seeing results. Whether you're looking to make changes around movement, food, body image, or all three, I'm here to help you nurture a kind, respectful, and trusting relationship with your body so you can feel your very best. Click the link in the show notes to book a free consultation, and together we'll uncover what's getting in the way of you having the results you want. You'll leave this call knowing exactly what you need to work on, and together we'll explore whether one of my coaching offers is a good fit for you. I can't wait to meet you.